Hopefully that's working. All right, so what we're going to do is basically use text string to add detail to this scene. So the scene I've given you is this one. So really not much to it, just a few objects, a few planes, a few boxes. But what we're going to do is using text string and materials, we're going to transform that to this one. There we go. Again, that's not putting any more geometry, no more modeling. It's essentially using textures. Okay, so let me just open that scene again. So this one that you've got. So we can start this. Should we do this together? We'll do as much as we can together. Remember, you'll get this screen recording anyway uploaded, so you don't necessarily need to follow it. So if you look at your project, the first thing you need to do is make sure that Maya is linked to your project. So again, if you've got a new scene, first thing you need to do is go File, Set Project. You select the project, which is Maya's Chicken Project. Yep, hopefully. Then when you go File, Open Scene, opening up your scene that you've got, which is this one. Okay, so the very first thing you need to do is, now you would have picked up something from looking at those video tutorials. So can anyone let me know how to assign a new material to an object? From what you've seen in those videos, what do we do? Well, that will come into it, but the quickest way of doing it is, well, take a step back. If you look at all the models now, irrespective of what they are, they're all grey. Okay, so they've all got a grey default surface or material. So to put a specific colour or material on a particular object, we need to replace that default grey material with a new one. Few ways of doing it. At this stage, the easiest way would be to, and let's just say we use this ground plane to begin with. You select it, you right click on it, and then right down the bottom there you've got Assign New Material. Okay, so from this list, you would have gathered from those video tutorials that there's two basic ones at this stage that we need to look at. One that's reflective and shiny called a blend, and one that's not shiny called a lambert. Again, don't worry about the bulk of these for the time being. So I'm just going to use another lambert material. So as soon as I do that, it opens up the attributes for that new material. Okay, now even though we're going to put a texture on this, what I'll do is I'll go to the color channel, and just to sort of show you, click on the color channel and choose the color. So now that particular object has no longer got the default material. It's got a new material, and I can do whatever I like with that, like i.e. change the color of it. So likewise, I'll just add just while we're working, if I just create a sphere, okay, again, that looks great because it's got the same default grey material. If I want to put a new color onto that, I right-click the object, assign new material. From this list, again, just basically focus on either a shiny one or which is a blend, or a matte one, which is a lambert. I'll click on the shiny one, the blend. Okay, so you can see it's changed the material from the default. I can choose the color, but it's also got a shine. Now, because it's got a shine, I can do a few extra things in the attribute editor. One of the things I can do is change the color of the highlight. So if the highlight there for that shiny material is sort of a white color, I can go to specular color and change it to whatever color I need to. It doesn't have to be the same. Okay, it just gives you a little bit of variety there. Okay, so that's assigning new material. But in our case, what we want to do with this scene is actually add a texture. But even though we want to add a texture, we still have to begin with, we still have to add a new material. Okay, so we've added the new material there. If you want to access where the material attribute editor is, select your object, right click, and go to material attributes. It'll reopen the attribute editor if you've happened to sort of close it or get out of it. Okay, so we've added a color. We can change the color if you want. But in this case, what we need to do is add a texture. So to add a texture in the color channel, I'm going to click this little checkerboard or this little checker here, that symbol. Click on it. It opens up this other list. Again, ignore 99% of them for the time being. What we want to do is look at this node, this icon, the file icon. So we click on that. It opens up the file attribute editor here. And using that yellow folder, I'm going to click it. and then directly browse an image. Now, the images that we're going to use are found in the source images folder of your Maya project. So I'll go down, work out which one I want. I think it's this one. Although I've got two variations there, you've actually got the lighter one. But what I did, I actually loaded up the lighter one. And then once it was in Maya, I thought, well, it's probably not the right color. So I went back into Photoshop and adjusted it. Okay, we'll get into that, but I'll just load in the one that you've got as well, the lighter one. And open. Now, it's loaded the texture. You can see the preview, but you might not be able to see it here in the view. So to see it in the view, you need to go to the shading menu on top of each of the view and make sure hardware texturing is turned on. When that's the case, then you've got the texture loaded on your scene. Now, because we've got limited time and this is being recorded, it might make it easy. I mean, keep up if you can, but because you'll have the screen recording, it'd be good to sort of go through this yourself afterwards. Okay, it might be easier because it's going to take a little bit more time to get it through and having you do it. So I guess for now, just watch, and then you can access the recording and try it yourself. All right, does that make sense? Good. Okay, so there's the first texture loaded up. Now, before we work out whether that texture is laid out or mapped correctly, one thing I want to do is create a polygon plane. Okay, now, if I look at this polygon plane, as you know, it's got one face, four sides, four vertices. If I now go to, under the UV menu, go to UV editor, which is here, this is what we find. Now, it's a little bit sort of confusing at the moment because you sort of, might not know what it's referring to. But actually, for people that have gone into the UV editor video tutorial, can someone sort of maybe mention what the UV editor is or does or shows? What's the UV editor from what you've covered so far? Have people gone that far? Okay, I'll talk a little bit about that I'll place that texture that I've got here, I'll place it on this object as well so you can sort of see what it looks like in the UV editor. Okay, now, again, right click on it. Now, I don't have to go new material, I can assign an existing one because it already exists here. Yeah. So this one is Lambert 2. Again, you can rename materials down the track because it's easier to keep up with what they are. So I'll assign Lambert 2 to this one as well, and then we'll look at what it shows in the UV editor. So if I right click that object, go assign existing because we've already got the material, and choose Lambert 2, you can see now, okay, you can see it's that material there, but it doesn't look quite right. Okay, it sort of looks stretched or squashed or something. Okay, even though it looks fine here. Now, to get a sense of why it's looking like this and what we can do, this is when we go into the UV editor. Now, just by looking at comparing these two textures, if I select this object, you can see what's been shown here. And if I select this object, you can see what's been shown here. So to compare the two, see if we can make sense of what is being shown in the UV editor. So looking at this one, the way the texture is sitting on that object, and looking at this one, if we look at the UV editor, what's the difference? And so what, in a general sense, does the UV editor is showing us? What's it showing us? Anyone? Okay, I'll get another object just to sort of hopefully highlight it a bit more. Okay, there's a cube. Okay, so what's this thing that appears in the UV editor? What is that thing? Yeah, it's an unfolded cube. So in this UV editor, what we have is a flattened or unfolded version of the object. So because this object is basically a plane, then you can see that is essentially referring to the plane. This thing is a cube, so it's an unfolded cube. If we choose a sphere, that's what a sphere looks like. Okay, so it basically gets the object, unwraps it, flattens it out. So then what we have here correlates with the object. So this is a texture space. This allows us to look at how we can arrange, adjust, or map the texture that we want onto the particular object. Okay, so this is a texture representation of the object. Again, oops, I've just moved something. I hate when that happens. And this has all been recorded. Goodness gracious, go away. How do I okay, that's better. Okay, if I get one more object, maybe let's just say get a cylinder. That's what a cylinder looks like. Does that make sense? It's like you've gone in, chopped up that cylinder in this case, split it up, and laid it flat, say, on the table. Okay, because that arrangement makes it easier to work out how best to apply and adjust the texture for the particular object. Okay, so given that, what do you think that is showing us in relation to the texture? So the texture is on that material. It's also on that as well, but can you see anything in the UV editor where we can perhaps, where it shows that it's not covering the whole texture? Is something indicating that that texture space here is not using the whole texture? And what's that? Exactly, as opposed to this one. So even though this is subdivided, you can see that whole shape covers the whole texture. So you see it all. So now, how to fix it? Okay, now, because in this texture space, you're using points, but you're using texture points called UVs. So what I'm going to do is right-click in the UV editor, choose UVs, and then you can see you can select the points here, just like you're able to select the vertices here. So if I select the UV points in here, go to the normal move tool and move it up, you can see what's happening. Oops, I missed one there. Okay, so I'm adjusting it. So as I'm adjusting